Welcome to the video lecture on CS3251 Programming in C Unit 3 Functions and Pointers. In this unit we are going to see what are the ways to pass a parameter to a function. So before that we will see what are the types of parameters. First one is formal parameter and another one is actual parameter. Formal parameters are the arguments that are defined inside the function. So the parameters, that arguments that are defined inside the body of the function are called formal parameters, and its scope is limited to the function. When the control is moved from the exits from the function, that formal parameters will be destroyed. So the scope is limited to the function. Another type of argument is actual parameter. So actual parameter is the actual data passed from the calling function. So we have to know what calling function is and called function is. Calling function is the place where we are going to call our function. So calling function is the place from where we are calling our actual function. So our actual function is called function. So the place where we are calling the function is called calling function, and our actual function is called called function. So the data that we are passing from the called function are called actual parameters. So there are two ways to pass the arguments to a function. First one is pass by value, second one is pass by referent. So pass by value means we are going to pass only the values to the function. So the modification that are made inside the functions are not visible to the calling function, so that are not reflected to the calling function, since we are going to pass only the values of the variables. We are not going to pass our variables to the called function. We are going to pass the values only, so the modification will not be reflected in the called function. So in this program, what we are going to do is we are going to swap the values of two variables a and b. So in the main function we have two variables named a and b, and the values of the values are 55. So value of a is 55, value of b is 33. So before swapping, the value of a is 55 and b is 33. So in this step we are going to call our function swap. So our control moved to the called function from the calling function. So this main function is called our calling function. This swap function is called called function. Okay. This a and b are called actual parameters since they are present inside the calling function. These values are called, these a and b's are called formal parameter, which is present inside the body of our function. So what happening in this function is we have created another one. So when we pass these two values, the formal parameters will be created. They are a and b. Here we are passing only the values, that is 55 and 33. So those values are stored in these formal parameters 55 and 33. So in this formal parameters the values will be 55 and 33. So we created another one variable, that is t. In this step we stored the value of a in t. So the value in t is 55 now. In the second step the value of a becomes 33. So it becomes 33. In the third step the value of b becomes 55. So now the values are swapped. The value of a becomes 33 now. Value of b becomes 55. So after swapping inside the function, the values of a and b are 33 and 55. So here you can note that these changes are only made in the formal parameters. We didn't do any modification to the actual parameter. So these modification will not be reflected in the calling function. So this is what happens when we pass the arguments as a value. So another type is pause by reference. So this is the answer. Before swapping, the value of A and B is 55 and 33. After swapping, 33 and 55 inside the swap function, but inside the main function, calling function, there is no change. That modifications will not be reflected here. Next method is pause by reference. So what we are going to do is, here we are not going to pass the value, we are going to pass the address of the argument. So we are going to pass the address of the variables to the called function. So what are all the changes made will be definitely reflected in our calling function. So the changes made will affect the passed argument because we are passing the address, not the values. So the changes will be made inside the address only. So all the changes will be reflected here. So the same program, but here you can note that we are not passing the values, we are passing the address. We know ampersand symbol is the referencing operator. Whenever the ampersand symbol precedes a variable, that variable's address will be returned. So ampersand A gives the address of the variable A and ampersand B gives the address of the variable B. We know that pointer is a variable which can used to store the address of another variable. So here we are passing the address. So definitely in the calling function we have to use the pointer to store the address passed from the calling function. Here star A and star B. Here we are passing the address, and in the called function we are using pointers to hold the address passed from the calling function. So here we are having the variables A and B. The value in A is 55 and value in B is 33. The address of this variable, suppose the address is 1000 and here the address is 2000, means we are going to pass these addresses to the called function. Now our pointer A is having the address, it is pointing to the address of variable A, and our pointer in called function is pointing our variable B in calling function. So we are creating another one pointer. So it is going to point the value in, it is going to refer the value in A. So now the value pointed by T is 55. So by this statement the value pointed by T is 55 and we are going to change the value in A as the value in B. So by this step what will happen is the value of A will be changed to the value pointed by B. So the value here we are changing the value, not the address. So that value pointed by this pointer is changed to the value pointed by B, and in this step what we are going to do is we are going to change the value in B by value pointed by T. So the value pointed by T is 55. So this is happened in this step. So after swapping, inside the swap function the value of A and B is 33 and 55. After this statement the control will be transferred to our calling function, and here also the values of A and B is 33 and 55. So whenever we pass the reference, the changes made in the called function will definitely reflected in the calling function also. So the output will be Before swapping, the value of A is 55 and B is 33. After swapping, inside the swap function also 33 and 55. Inside the main functions also 33 and 55. So from this we can make it clear that whenever we pass the value as reference, then the changes made in the called function will definitely reflected in the calling function. But in case of pass by value, the modification will not be reflected in the calling function. So in this lecture we have seen what are the ways to pass a parameter to the function. That is pass by value and pass by reference. Two types of arguments, formal argument and actual argument. These are the formal argument, and the arguments used inside the calling function are called actual arguments. The function from where is called as calling function, and our actual function is called as called function. So these are the things we have seen in this lecture. Thank you.